Assalamualaikum and hi, I am Amaru Faida with the Mama Hirozi, and today I'm going to talk about language shift and its factors. So first off, let's get to know what is language shift. Well, it's actually a process whereby a speech community shifts from speaking one language towards speaking into another language. And commonly, the shift always toward the language of the dominant group. And because the dominant or majority language always associated with status, prestige, and social success. So, in order to survive in the society, people speak the majority language to reach higher status and economic gain. Next, language shift can happen within three different communities, which consist of migrant majorities, non-migrant, and migrant minorities. So, for the migrant minorities, language shift occurs when over the time the language of the wider society displaces the mother tongue of the minority language. And a good example of this is the migrant families. So, let's say a Filipino family. They migrate into England. So, this Filipino family is represent the migrant minority, and the local English there is the warrior society. So for this Filipino family, the process of language shift from Tagalog to English will begin when their first domain that the children meet English is at school. Why school? Because at school they are expected to interact in English, since English is the only way to communicate with teachers and also friends. And soon after that, English becomes a normal language to speak with friends and siblings. And due to that, these children they bring the English at home. Then their parents start to use English with them. Furthermore, in order to conform with the society, these children they need to speak in English well. And now we can see that this is the process of how language shift gradually took place for migrant families. Then, as for non-migrant, for this community, the political changes from the governor, economic changes such as industrial revolution, and social changes are somehow, in a way, contribute to the linguistic change. And the main idea of language shift occurs in non-migrant communities is when a certain language is overly used and it results to the extinction of native language like what happened with the Ovuit community. So what's going on with Ovuit community? Well, there's a language shift in Hungarian into German language. So Overwort is actually a town in Austria which mainly used Hungarian for formal and informal settings before the World War One. But then, due to the advancement in their economic activities, German is used widely almost everywhere and it was exposed to the locals for over a long period of time. And later, after the end of the war, the German becomes an official language in Overwort. And unfortunately, today in Overwort, Hungarian is only used at home. Moving on, for migrant majorities, there are two trends of language shift for this community, which first, the language shift, it always reflects the influence of both political and also economic factors. And second one, the language of colonial power, they are often become dominant in invaded countries. For example, the English-speaking settlers, which represent the migrant majorities, and when they arrived in New Zealand, the Maori language was threatened due to those settlers. They generally imposing their language along with their colonial rule. And as a result, the minority group there find themselves under pressure to adopt the language of those settlers. Okay, so now what are the factors that lead the community to shift from using one language into another? There are three. First one is economic, social, and political factors. And second one is demographic. And the third one is attitudes and values. So first for economic, social, and political factor, especially for economy, Like when people are desperate to get a job, they can even change their language for this reason. Meanwhile, for social, like there's a pressure from the society. Whereupon the immigrants who look and sound different, people will think of them as a threat. So that's why they have to master in English in order to assimilate with the locals. The second one is the demographic factor. So for this, the size of group can determine the rate of language shift. For instance, like Spanish can survive in the United States due to large number of Spanish speakers there, and that makes the language shift tend to be slower. And for the third factor, which is attitudes and values, positive attitude equals to high value the language. So when the minority communities highly value their language, then the process of language shift is much more slower. Like the Maori language, it's a language that's spoken by indigenous people in New Zealand. So even though the Maori is at the risk of extinct, but through some initiatives made on media, education, and legislation, now the Maori becomes an official language of New Zealand. That's all from me. Thank you for listening.